Hi everyone. Today we will present the Loblaw company, and here's my group members: Peggy, Rex, Liz, Mike, and my name is Aiko. So we'll start with our presentation with the introduction. Then we'll analyze the industry, company, and with the present with strategy, issue, and recommendations. Some key points about the company. The company is largely grocery retailer in Canada, which was founded in 1990. And currently the company operates over 2,300 stores across Canada. The company was very successful in private label brands program, including several well-known brands. And recently the Loblaw just acquired the Shoppers Drug Mart for $12.4 billion. The industry we are focused on is the supermarket and the grocery store industry in Canada in 2013. Some performance from last year generated the sales about $84.5 billion with a profit about $1.7 billion. The annual growth rate is around 0.2%. So the market was dominated by three large companies. Loblaw was leading the market with 28% market share. Some key success factors including supply chain, size and location of the retail stores, and also the customer attraction and the loyalty.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a bit more about the industry analysis and particularly the competitive environment that Loblaw operates in. So we're going to use the e-Porter's 5 Forces model to discuss that a bit further. For starters, we're going to look at the spread of new entrants. That is moderate currently. There's fairly low barriers to entry. But there aren't very many companies that have the capital currently necessary to enter what's already a fairly crowded market. The bargaining power of suppliers is pretty low. There are a lot of them. They're very economically dependent on the grocery store sector. Bargaining power of buyers is moderate, so grocery store buyers have a bit more power to exact over the grocery stores themselves. It's very easy to switch between providers. You can sort of order different items at different locations, which makes it, leads to more competition between them. And threat of substitute products is moderate, so in this case what we're referring to is other industries, so like warehouse clubs or on the smaller scale, specialty food stores. Those are both separate industries that can encroach onto this territory. And so within the industry itself, even though there are only a few sort of larger firms that dominate, the competitive rivalry is still considered to be high. And so we'll also be looking at the life cycle here. We can see that on life cycle model, the supermarkets and grocery stores industry is said to be mature, meaning that demand has sort of stabilized at some level, and so now there's much more of a push between retailers to try and grab what they can of the existing market share, so it leads to sort of more competition and usually lower prices.
Alright, talking about the Loblaw business model, they have 3 operational segments: distance retailer, financial services, and real estate. If you can see in the graph, retailer segment actually generated more than about 97% of the revenues. So in this presentation, we will focus mostly on the retailer segment. And Loblaw also have very big brand portfolios, so which means each chain should serve a different market in order to capture as much market share as possible. The competitive advantage versus business level strategy. So Loblaw has been developing and built up a very strong relationship between its resources, capacities, competitive advantages with their strategies. And as a result, they were able to sustain the profitability. What this process is illustrated in the competitive advantage models. And Loblaw is also very well known for their negotiating and bargaining power. And they also have very strong presence of store, many stores. They possess a large portfolios of store, which including more than 500 corporate store and about 500 franchise store as well. And recently they have been upgrading their supply chains system and IT system, so it's getting more efficiency, more efficient. And more importantly, Loblaw is able to utilize its resources to enhance all the primary and supporting activities in their value chains. So this is demonstrated by the successes of the business level strategies. So the first business level strategies is the wide range of products and services to meet with all the customer needs. And so they offer everything from food, health, beauty, pharmacy, and a lot of many different things. And second business level strategies is the strong and innovative control brand programs with about 22 different brands, including President Choice, No Name, Joe Fresh, and many other branches. The successes of these differentiation strategies actually prove that Loblaw able to use their resources to gain more competitive advantage. Last but not least in my company's analysis is the corporate level strategies. The first strategies is, as mentioned before, like Loblaw have very strong control brands program. So it's allowed company to compete with their competitor by offering a lower price, selling private label products at a lower price than the national brands. And second strategy is the merger and acquisitions. So they continuously seeking and achieving growth opportunities in emerging and complementary businesses. So in 2009, they bought TNT Supermarkets, which is Canada's biggest Asian food retailer. And recently they also acquired Mart, which helped them to expand their businesses more. Yeah.
So the first issue that we have identified is Loblaw has limited goals since the industry is mutual at the moment. And besides the local rivalries that the Loblaw has to compete with, like new entrants across the border from the US like Walmart and Target are also big threats to the companies. So from the chart that we can see that Loblaw, although it still maintains its top positions in terms of having most of the retail values, the actual number was actually decreasing in the over the past 5 years. So on the other hand, like Sobeys and Walmart, their market shares were increasing over the past 5 years.
So some possible solutions to the issue of low profitability for Loblaw as a company. One idea is that they could go further into the territory of doing something like a price war. So they're using some of the reserves that they have to lower prices on goods against some of the less well-established entrants in the market. Another potential idea would be using their mergers and acquisitions to get into sort of more diversified markets like they've been doing, or possibly more horizontal integration if they're able to do so. In terms of the recommendations, sort of how to evaluate those options, the price war idea, it could be problematic in the sense that most of the companies have already kind of gone down that route and cut costs and prices as much as they can, and so it's questionable whether they would actually be able to increase profitability as a result. The mergers and acquisitions seems a bit more plausible. It is a strategy they're already pursuing, and they might be able to get into markets that are experiencing more profitability and might be able to benefit from sort of complementarities with the existing grocery retail business. So in terms of the implementation schedule, we're kind of looking at two general timeframes. In the short term, perhaps the next couple of years, the company is going to have to spend a lot of its resources on integrating the Shoppers Drug Mart chain because that acquisition was a significant portion of its own sort of business size. But once that has been finished, in sort of the years following, their efforts should really be going into finding new industries, taking actions to network with other industries where there is still the potential for growth, where profit margins aren't quite so low, and where they could make use of Loblaw's existing distribution systems, IT systems, and actually achieve some sort of economies of scale and integration benefits.
So Loblaw also has another problems with the strategy, and the second issue is in Shoppers Drug Mart integration. And the first problem is restrictions by the Competition Bureau, because in order to prevent Loblaw squeezing suppliers of Shoppers Drug Mart, the Canadian Competition Bureau asked Loblaw to sell 18 stores and 9 pharmacies in Canada. And the Bureau also asked Loblaw to follow the restrictions in the 5 years in the future. So the problems for Loblaw is that because they close a certain amount of stores and pharmacies, the revenue and profits will be decreasing, and they need to adjust their strategic plans to comply with the restrictions. So, and the second issue is the change of top positions in the Loblaw and Shoppers. Glenn Weston, who is the chairman of Loblaw, became the president of Loblaw in July this year. And Mike Moss, who is the executive vice president and chief merchandising officer, will take over and become the president of Shoppers Drug Mart at the end of 2014. And some people think that the changes is disruptive because Mr. Weston has not been in a role of similar capacity, and it should be considered that the Loblaw should think how the shoppers will integrate to the new company and how they would adjust to the new positions. And for the alternatives for this issue, we think that they should follow or ignore the restrictions. To follow the restrictions, they can avoid some legal issues if they did something wrong for the practices, and they can benefit from but they cannot benefit from the lower costs from the suppliers. But if they decide to ignore the restrictions, they maybe get involved in the legal issues because might be something wrong with the business, and they can definitely get lower costs for the practices. And for the management team change, they can operate and communicate each other to get more sense about the culture of the two companies. And for this issue, we definitely recommend Loblaw to follow the restrictions because the government has more power to regulate the business, and the managed teams for both companies can have regular meetings and to know more about the companies. For their implementation schedule for short term, they can maintain good relations with the Bureau and keep in touch with them frequently to get updated information in time. And senior management teams for both companies can can immediately have meetings and communicate and cooperate each other. And for the long term schedule, they can comply with the restrictions in 5 years and see what happens in 5 years, and then set up the new strategies. And they can also launch a rotation program to make the managers of both companies to switch their positions and or send them to different departments to make sure that the organizational culture is fostered. Okay, thank you, Momo. Bye.